So now we look at this thing we call the split brain surgery, which is also called corpus callosotomy, right? Because it involves the severance of the corpus callosum. Yeah. So that's what it's all about, right? Sounds very simple, but it still takes a lot of skill to actually do this thing right. Yeah. So basically, that's what I say, right? Pathways connecting the right and left cerebral hemispheres are severed. So there are no noticeable changes in personality, intelligence, or speech, right? Which is, very, very non-intuitive, very surprising. And based on this surgery, right, and the experiments that follow, right, it was found that language and logical thought, they are localized to the left hemisphere, and the non-verbal aspects, okay, spatial aspects, or spatial cognition processing, are found to be localized to the right hemisphere. Yeah. So how is this thing even possible, right? Yeah. So this is we see this from the traditional, one of the first evidence. This is during the 60s. Okay, Roger Sperry, Michael Gazzaniga. So Sperry was the advisor, right, of Gazzaniga at Caltech, right? So Sperry later won the Nobel Prize. Gazzaniga later set up the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience, right? So yeah, so he's a founding editor, right? And so basically they tested this person, right? There's this famous person, it's a bit like HM for them, right? He went through hundreds of such experiments, yeah. So as we learned from our vision lecture, right, there's contralaterality, right, in visual processing, remember? So it's about half of our receptive field from either eyes, right, will send their outputs, right, to the other hemisphere, right, yeah. So this one you guys can look it up, right? So I think this should be the left, if I'm not mistaken, right? This should be the left receptive field, and then sending it to the right. And then when I look at the right eye, that will be the right part, right? Sending it all the way to the left visual cortex. So this person is looking at the word H-E-A-R-T, which spells heart, okay? So I added in the red lines. So his left eye is basically will be processing A-R-T, right? Yeah. Okay, so just to be more clear, it's really like his left hemisphere will be processing ART, and then his right hemisphere will be processing HE, right? So later on, then you really have to blank the screen, right? Otherwise, that's not an experiment, right? Yeah, you have to blank the screen and then test the person what you see, right, based on his working memory or sensory memory, right? And then this person said, I saw art, right? I saw art. Okay, that's fine. That's perfectly legit, right? Because that's what his left hemisphere, which is supposed to be processing language, that's what his left hemisphere sees, right? But when he's asked to point, right, with his left hand to the word he saw, he's not being able to point to art, right? He points it to he, right? So this is kind of intriguing. Why does it happen? Because the word he was processed by his right brain, right? And then the right brain basically was sending signals to his left hand, telling his left hand to point to he, right? And then his left brain actually got no idea that it's a word or a syllable, right? So he's just pointing to he based on the recognition that it's some kind of geometric shape, based on some kind of geometric figure. That's it. He did not recognize it as a word or a syllable, right? Just take note of that, yeah. So that's a very interesting part, yeah. So the Wada test is something similar as well, right? But this is much more invasive, right? Yeah. So basically, you really try to tranquilize, anesthetize one hemisphere, and usually it's a left hemisphere, right? Because it's kind of easier to do that way. Yeah. So anesthetize. So this person got his left brain sedated, right? Tranquilized, and then he was touching the spoon, right? You can see in the diagram, and then later on, because his left brain was tranquilized, he wouldn't be able to verbalize, right? He wouldn't be able to tell you what was the name of the object he touched. No way. So he said nothing. But then his right brain registered the shape of the object, right? And so because of that, the shape of the object was taken into account. He was still able to kind of point to it with his left hand, right? So his right brain is sending all the inputs to his left hand. So if he were to do the same thing with his right hand, he wouldn't be able to do it, trust me. He wouldn't be able to do it because his left brain was just anesthetized, right? I mean, his left brain could be sending signals to his legs and he could still move around, right? But there's no way, the conversion of verbal meaning into action is possible with a tranquilized left hemisphere, yeah. So let's just go back. So for this part, right, Michael Gazzaniga's this finding. Actually, to be honest, I'm not too sure. Okay, whether if you tell this person if he can point to art, with his right hand. My guess is that it's not possible. It's kind of random, right? It will be either he or ART, right? If he's pointing it with his right hand, yeah. Because I think it's because since it's left brain, it's not really communicating with his right brain. His left brain will have difficulty converting the verbal information into motor actions, into motor signals, right? So as a result, his right hand wouldn't be so nimble, right? Wouldn't be able to pick out the right word. Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. Yeah. Okay, so for more details, right, I think the answer to my question, to my speculation, actually can be found in this book, right? I read it, but I couldn't really fully recall it, right? I don't believe that I say anything wrong. I think, yeah, it's basically only the left hand can find the shape, can recognize the shape of an object, right? The right hand is pretty much, making random guesses. Yeah. So this is a book. You guys can read it. I think it's not in our library, not in JCU library, but in our public libraries, right? So that's Michael Gazzaniga's famous book, right?